So today I'm going to talk about education and personalization. I need to leave that water in case I get a little thirsty. I began envisioning what personal education could look like, personalized education of the future could look like, when my son asked me about trash. Specifically, he asked me about how compost is made, how food from our table becomes compost and then turns into soil. And I have my son, he turns 5 in 3 days, and a daughter who just learned to walk. And my son, like every 4-year-old, loves to ask questions, tons of questions, all the time. And he asked me, Daddy, how does our food become soil that we use to plant? And I thought I knew the answer, actually. But I wasn't completely sure, so we went on YouTube together. And we looked it up and found a couple videos. After we watched them, I found out there's 3 ways to make compost, by the way. One is with worms, one is without worms, and then one is with no air. You just use bacteria and yeast. But more importantly, we saw how excited he was to just learn things that I thought were pretty complicated. So now at the dinner table, we like to play a game with the family, where we take turns, and every night one person asks a question. And then we go on YouTube and research it, and then we all learn about it together. And right before I left, he was like, Mommy, it's your turn tonight. What do you want to ask YouTube? And I knew something special at that moment. Not that he did anything in particular, but that if my son, as a 4-year-old who is just learning how to read, already has the passion, the intellectual curiosity, and he can learn about anything he wants when he wants, imagine how education could look like 10 years from now, 20 years from now. And so, technology and education are intersecting, merging in ways that have never been possible before. Now you can get smartphones, tablets, Chromebooks for about $100. You can get internet access now, obviously, through Wi-Fi, 3G, and hopefully soon 4G in Vietnam. And all that does is it makes content easier to find and cheaper to access than ever before. But at the same time, that has huge ramifications, huge lessons for us in education. In particular, those of us who are teachers now have to really think about our value as lecturers. If my value was lecturing on the topic of compost to my son before, or if I'm, as a teacher, trying to teach exponents to my students, I'm probably not the best person on that topic, right? And lecturers today now have to compete with everyone around the world who's ever made a video on anything. We might want to thank or even blame Khan Academy, YouTube, Google, TED Talks. But the reality is, anyone who wants to find content now, it's so easy. And it's a commoditization of the content. But at the same time, that creates value and opportunity for us to look at all the other elements that go into learning and education. So how do we reimagine that without letting our teachers become an endangered species? The problem, it starts with the Industrial Revolution and the education model that was born out of that. A factory-style, one-size-fits-all, everyone goes at one pace together. You might start off different, but by the end of the graduation, you all look the same. We're all studying together, we're all doing the same thing, and we're expected to conform to the same set of standards. And that has many problems. The first problem, and I think the biggest problem for me personally, is that this scene is so similar to how it was 100 years ago, where 28, 30 students in a classroom and one teacher. And that teacher is preparing all the lessons, the tests, and everyone's going to do it together. But at the same time, there's some people that material might be already, they know it, it's too fast for them or too slow for others, or they're having trouble catching up. And the issue is, when a teacher's giving that explanation, if the first time you don't understand as a student, the teacher knows that, they have to make a decision. One, Do I stop and repeat what I just said and make sure everybody understands and slow down the class? Or two, do I skip forward and just hope that these students will be able to catch up? And that's a terrible sacrifice. And we're not able to provide the personalized attention and the personalized learning styles that every student might need. I don't know about you guys, or if about yourselves, or do you know someone, a child, a cousin, a friend? Does anybody here know someone who says they hate math? That's a lot of people. Okay, so that's a very common thing. We run into that all the time. In fact, students will come into me, their heads will be down, their shoulders are slumped, and they're not smiling. But they'll say, like, I'm advising them on their academic plans. And they're telling me how, I hate math, or science, or whatever the subject is. And I'm asking, so why? What's causing this? And it's like, I'm bad at it. We find, though, that 9 times out of 10, students are not bad at math. They do have holes in concepts, though, that they didn't study. And just like when you're building a skyscraper, right? If you don't have a strong foundation, how can you build every floor thereafter so that it's a stable, tall structure? And if you want to learn calculus, you better know algebra, and you better know your exponents and multiplication tables down below, right? But because of the one-size-fits-all pacing, if a student doesn't get it the first time, you're falling farther and farther and farther behind. And it's impossible to catch up. And as a result, this one-size-fits-all pacing destroys the confidence of the students. And we see that time and time again. The second problem is age-based grouping. We assume that all first graders should be 6 years old, and then within all the 6-year-olds we talk about, they look the same. The 7-year-olds look the same, the 5-year-olds look the same, but in reality, that's definitely not the case, right? We see all sorts of levels of mastery of math, of English, of different skills, and it looks different even for the same students in that class for different subjects. But the reality is that they're forced to be, 1, at the same age level, and 2, all these mixed levels within the class. But in the real world, when do we ever get to work with just the same age? So I'm 36 years old. I don't work with just 36-year-olds. I never have. And it's not realistic. And at the same time, if we can provide the 6-year-olds with 7-year-olds in the same environment, maybe they have someone to look up to. And if you are the 7-year-old, working with the 6-year-old or the 5-year-old, would it be nice to practice being a big brother, a big sister? Having a chance to work on the social skills, the interpersonal skills, the emotional intelligence is just as important. And that leads to the third problem, and I think we've touched on this before in this conference, but our education system is not preparing students for the real world. I've seen all sorts of statistics, I'm sure you guys have too, whether it's 40%, 50%, whatever the right statistic is. It's a big number that are not prepared for the real world. And that is scary. Vietnam has gotten out of the low-income country status, and we're now squarely middle income. But we are not going to get out of this middle-income purgatory, this trap, unless we go from a low value-added labor economy to a higher value-added knowledge economy. And while the rest of the world is developing economies of knowledge, of creativity, of collaboration, we are still focused on memorization and spitting answers back. And that is a very sad, unfortunate reality. So, my one thing I'd like to share is a simple framework of 3 what-ifs, 3 potential questions we can ask for anyone here who's interested in trying to change, reform, personalize education. The first is, what does it mean to be a teacher? right? We assume right now that a classroom has to have 30 students and one teacher lecturing. But why can't you have a classroom that is 30 teachers for every student? Why can't you have students teaching each other? Why can't we have students learning on their own and helped guided by everything that they're finding through online resources, now that the content's becoming easier to access? It's that motivation, that empowerment that the students have to help each other and grow with each other that's really going to change things. The second question to think about is whether or not we can ditch the time-based model of teaching based on grades that all advance together to a mastery-based model where students only move forward individually based on what they know. The reality to do this, though, is actually very hard. You have to change not just the classroom, not just the teachers, but the entire school experience. But it starts, I think, with data. When you give students data, and they know how well they're doing on a certain subject or topic, they can tell. And you might think that, oh, giving them too much data is like scary. We found the opposite. When you give students data, they love it. They get competitive, they get excited, they think it's a video game, right? And so we're able to have students take that data and motivate themselves to get better in ways that they decide. Second is, the teachers still have a very important role, right? For us, the teachers are curating, deciding on which students are having trouble in certain consistently, maybe which students are doing well consistently, or they're problem areas for the whole class. And you can now assign groupings. Maybe the teacher wants to troubleshoot and intervene to help a particular student on one of these red spots. But maybe better yet, you'll find a student who has a proficiency in that topic already, but might be weaker, say, at speaking. And now we're able to pair these students together, where both students are working together and getting something out of it. One learning the concept, the other one practicing their speaking communication skills. We can collect this data and use it for both teachers and students to use not just for the academic concepts, but also all these qualitative comments, the communication, the listening skills, the teamwork skills. And I think it's very important that we provide the students some input and some control into what they're learning. Instead of coming to listen to me or anyone else just tell you about what you're going to learn today, wouldn't it be nice if students could say, well, today I think I already understand this concept. I just want to do a quick review and move on to the next thing. On to the next concept, on to the next concept. And so they can choose. Today, do I want to work, in this case, on vocabulary? Do I want to jump to the math word problems? But it's up to them. And that playlist mentality, that individualization, again, gets to the root of the motivation for every student. Lastly, and perhaps most difficult, is there a way we can foster divergent, creative, collaborative thinking? So, our system today is set up to teach very well towards the left. When we're given a problem, we expect one answer. Or we're maybe able to analyze a lot of different inputs to come up with one answer. But at the same time, the world it has many problems that require creative solutions, right? And if you look at companies today, whether you're inventing a new product or you're researching something new in the lab, you need to have both these skills, convergent and divergent skills at different parts in the process. When we think about, this is a representation here where how maybe an idea can come to fruition. If we start at the beginning, maybe we do need to think of lots of different potential ideas. What are the numerous ways we could solve this problem? And then as we work together, we go through it, we can sit down and debate with one another, argue with one another, convince one another, take feedback from each other, and then come to define the best solution in that situation. But today we're not doing this. We're doing a very linear path, going straight to the one solution. So we need to change that. At the same time, when I when we started Everest Education, I thought, and many people have told us, that maybe you guys should just copy what you see elsewhere and just do it in Vietnam. But our experience, I'm very happy to say, it showed that even though we're in a small emerging market, we can innovate and we can export what we're doing to other places. Back in November of 2013, some of you might know him. His name is Michael Horn. He's the executive director and co-founder of the Clay Christensen Institute, which is affiliated with Harvard, where Professor Christensen does a lot of research on disruptive innovations. If you guys have read Innovator's Dilemma, Innovator's Solution, Innovator's DNA, that's all that research. Michael is the education head who has applied this research to the education space. And he's met with all the companies, the entrepreneurs, the regulators who are working on personalizing education, blended learning models all over the world. And he emailed me out of the blue. And, like, we had met very loosely before, but the email caught me off guard. He's like, hey Tony, I got an Eisenhower Fellowship, and the US government is going to pay for me to go investigate education innovation in Korea and Vietnam. And I had to stop. I didn't even read the rest of the message. I was like, wait, why is someone like Michael, a global education expert, coming here to study innovation? And so we talked on the phone afterwards, and he explained a little bit more. He's like, you know, Tony, our theories about disruptive innovation, exactly, but we're all innovating along this together. And just last week, we came to agreement with a school in Los Angeles that saw what we were doing in Vietnam. And they said, hey, can you help our charter school students do this? And, you know, we'd like to come talk to you. Can you teach us more about what you're learning and try it? So we'll be trying to pilot this soon. And I don't know if it's going to work. I hope it does. I don't think we're going to be alone. I think you guys here in this room and the young community we have in Vietnam have the passion, the capabilities, the network to go develop innovative products, services, solutions that will drive real change. And it's not just for here. Just because we're a small local market doesn't mean we can't have big international dreams. And I really hope that those of you guys here with us today help work as part of this ecosystem to make personalized learning a reality.